Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is the TheFlyYoungGentleman here, and I'm bringing you a traditional kind of commentary video today. It's been way too long, and I really wanted to talk about the 2-week theory. Now, if you've never heard of this, it's pretty much, in a broad sense, wait a couple weeks and everyone will forget. And the theory just becomes more prevalent, and it's so much easier to see now because we have, popular news media on so many different platforms. We have it on our phones, our computers, our televisions, everything. And it's really interesting because we really get to see in a light that we never once did about how everyone forgets about, things that they're so adamant about at one time in only a matter of a couple of weeks. And it's really interesting to me. So I did some more research to see, what kind of psychological studies there's been. And it turns out there has been quite a few. And they do nothing but bring interesting results. And one of my favorite examples of this that we all have seen personally is, you guys remember the Ebola thing, right? How everyone was afraid of Ebola. The Ebola fear-mongering by the media. Well, we live in the United States of fucking America, where we should not be afraid of something such as Ebola. But because the way news made it seem was that there is an Ebola outbreak in America when there never was. And they made it seem like it was really affecting us as a nation in terms of our nation's well-being, in terms of sickness. But realistically, it hadn't affected us at all. And the couple people that came here sick, it's so hard to spread Ebola when you're not during the initial symptoms. That's the thing about Ebola, is that it needs to be transferred from like bodily fluid or like secretion, anything like that. It can be transferred. But that's not that easy to do. It's not that easy to exchange bodily fluids at an amount that's enough to sustain that transfer of the Ebola virus. So Ebola was never really something you should have feared. And if you did, that's fine. Doesn't mean you're dumb, And that's one of the things that a lot of people don't realize. It doesn't mean you're dumb because you didn't know. Don't be offended. It means that nothing. All it means is that you watched the TV for 2 minutes. And you know what? If I didn't know any better, I probably would be completely afraid of a lot of things. Because the news does nothing but bullshit. And it's all it ever does. It's the best bullshitters in the world. Because not only are they bullshitting, but they're taking something that's true and spinning it into bullshit. Which is an art. It really is. It's an art. I'll give them that. And it's hilarious because, you see things like Trayvon Martin. Poor kid, shitty scenario, right? You had George Zimmerman, who could have handled that like an adult instead of a, child with a toy. And then you have Trayvon Martin, who handled it as a teenager, which he was. Simple, right? But it was bad, and it was a sad story. But in a couple weeks, everyone forgot about it. Nobody cared anymore. Once in a while, you'd see a resurgence. Like a few months later, you're like, oh, George Zimmerman, caught shopping at Target, because they had nothing else to report on it because they knew that it was dead. But they'd talk about him like, oh, he got pulled over today for speeding. Oh, what a rapist. And it was just ridiculous. And that's the thing, right? It's kind of how people think, is in very short, sporadic bursts. And not everyone thinks like that, but the majority of people think. You know, you tell them some news and it's what they hear right there. And they're shortly thereafter going to forget. And they're going to remember something new. And that new thing may be just as stupid and or more stupid. But it doesn't really matter. Because whatever it is, you know, something they're going to forget in 2 weeks. Which is interesting. But it's not necessarily something new. You know? It's been around forever. I just really feel like the only reason that we realize it on such a scale now is because people are just generally more informed. Now, you may say something that, you know, would totally be something that I say, and you say, oh, well, people are stupid. Yeah, they are stupid. But it doesn't mean that they're less informed necessarily, right? Maybe they're less informed about certain things or common sense or something that's important, but they are informed on Katy Perry's cup size, right? They're informed on Katy Perry's shark or some bullshit I've been seeing on Twitter. You know? It's hilarious because if you think about it, people being, you know, better informed should be a beautiful thing. But we always thought, you know, everyone always thought that informing people on a broader scale would be of things that were of importance to humanity as a whole, or things that are important to even your own communities. But it ended up being, you know, now what we see in popular media is, you know, who Rihanna is fucking, you know, and honest to God, it really is ridiculous because I don't give a fuck. And I don't think anyone should, honestly. Like, there's very few things where I say that you shouldn't think what you want to think, but man, who cares? Like, that you shouldn't care. You shouldn't care about what some celebrity's doing. Because what they're doing is none of your business. It's like, for example, what if you just went up to some random stranger on the street and started asking them questions about who they've had sex with in the last week? How do you think that's going to turn? Realistically, how do you think that's going to turn? And it's just nobody ever thinks of that these people are complete strangers to you. Just because you can relate to their music doesn't mean that, or their TV shows doesn't mean that they are your friend or someone that they can relate to you. No. That kind of stems into the entitlement thing, but then I'll start sounding really old. If you want to think about it, if you want to do some of your own personal research, which I highly recommend, it's really fun to do. I recommend waiting for the next big story, like Ebola, or, you know, the next thing's probably going to be something about terrorism, like we should actually be afraid, but we shouldn't. The next thing is probably going to be, ISIS going to invade, even though they will never invade us, because they can't. Let's pretend, right? That's probably going to be the next big thing. And what's going to end up happening is in 2 weeks, you're gonna go back and you're gonna talk to someone about it. You're gonna say, "Oh yeah, it's crazy, that new story about ISIS invading," and they're gonna say, "Oh, that old story." Ridiculous. And that's how you know, right? That's how you know that everything they're telling you is bullshit and of no significance or importance. Because if, ISIS really were to invade, you think that'd be a big deal, but they're not going to. Either that, they're going to make maybe a new disease up. Probably not. But maybe so, because they saw how well the fear-mongering went last time. All right, whenever you get a hint of a success, you want to keep on going. Well, I mean, most people. Some people don't, but, you know. It's interesting. It's really interesting. And what I find is even more interesting is the fact that these news agencies have the tenacity to make their bullshit public. I'm talking about their bullshit rules that they've made in place. Like, they literally have rules where they can't be in trouble from the government for making up lies and practicing them as truths. They literally have that shit in place. So they could tell you right now, John F. Kennedy was resurrected and reclosed the bay to Cuba. Because, you know, recently we've opened them.
Are you Crane?
He reclosed all communications with Cuba.
Are you all alone?
They could tell you that right now,
A couple of days ago.
and you could laugh, but you probably would believe it, you know, because they would preach it as truth. And everyone would believe it because most people are stupid, and everyone would believe it. So then we'd start to believe it. You know, everyone who isn't, you know, as influenced as easily by the media. You start, then we're like, what the fuck? If everyone, you know, everyone's kind of believing it, then you realize, no, that's impossible. And then in 2 weeks, everyone's going to forget about it because it never happened. Interesting. It's interesting. This is a long-winded video, I know. It's a long-winded video, but I wanted to just chill out and make a good video for you guys and share some of my opinions and my thoughts. Because I'd been thinking about this a good little bit recently because of some recent discussions I've had with a friend. But I'd like you guys to have a wonderful day. It has been the TheFlyYoungGentleman. If you don't know me, get to know me. And if you do know me, I'm glad to see you again. Remember to have class and get that ass. See you guys on the next one.